Update. Am I the a-hole for not offering to pay for my husband and his kids, leading him to spend all his savings? Original post. For a while now, my husband John has been getting more and more angry over little things, and generally moody and distant. I'd finally had enough and approached him about separation. This conversation led to a big blowout and him revealing the state of his finances. My husband and I have always kept our finances separate. Also, although we called each other husband and wife and had a wedding, we are not actually legally married. This was primarily for inheritance purposes, because we each have older children from previous relationships. Anyway, John revealed that he had basically no savings left. That all the money he had saved for retirement and for his kids' schooling was gone. Furthermore, he said it was all my fault since he used all the savings up to try and keep up with my lifestyle. There was never anything crazy in terms of bills or anything like that, and we always split it all equally. The house we live in I own outright as well, so there wasn't a mortgage payment. However, I've always liked to travel a lot on fairly extravagant vacations. I would invite John or John and his children to join on trips but never made them feel like they had to come. That said, he was expected to pay for himself and for his kids. And except for recently, he accepted every invitation. I would also give my kids things he considered extravagant but I considered normal, so he felt like he had to give similar things to his own kids. John said with all the spending to keep up, his savings dwindled very fast. I expressed that I couldn't understand how or why he would spend all he had when he knew he couldn't afford it. He said it was like keeping up with the Joneses, only worse, because it was at home so he couldn't block it out. John thinks since I knew his job, I should have had a basic understanding of his finances and realizes this wasn't a lifestyle he could maintain. That the kind thing would have been to offer to pay for the trips and other things, instead of dangle them in front of his and his kids' faces. Looking back, I probably could have realized that the spending didn't make sense for his salary, but I wasn't thinking about it. I don't think it was my responsibility to keep his finances in mind here. We had agreed from the beginning to keep our finances separate. So to me, that means paying for things separately. Edit. We do not live in a state with common law marriage. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. John blew through his finances all on his own, and that's because his fragile ego couldn't deal with you having more money than him. Exactly. If he's capable of complaining about it now, one wonders why he couldn't say anything then. There's something so cringe about an adult unable to take responsibility for their own choices. Yep. Also the BS of trying to keep up with her. I would have said a long time ago that I was running out of money. Pride can be a foolish thing. Not the a-hole. You housed him and his children rent-free. If he wasn't comfortable with your lifestyle, he should have talked to you like adults, instead of trying to keep up and sinking himself financially. That being said, you never agreed to support him beyond free housing, and it's not fair to expect you to deny your children memorable experiences because they can't afford the same, as long as your kids aren't acting like a-holes and rubbing it in his kids' faces. I agree with this wholeheartedly. I'll add, however, that whether or not incomes are being combined, finances and expectations and goals, including traveling, should always be discussed heading into a serious relationship. Lesson learned, OP. Hopefully lesson learned for a partner. Not the a-hole. I think he was upset about not being the man and not making as much money than you, so he felt he had to spend the money to keep up his pride. At any time, he could have talked to you about you both spending less money on things, but he didn't. That is 100% his fault. Now for the update. After reading all the comments in my first post, I realized I needed more time to think about things. I also thought with the situation how it was, it would be best that we spend holidays apart to avoid controversy. He wasn't a fan of the idea, but I eventually got him to agree to go. Last week, things settled down, so we met up to have a more detailed discussion about the state of his finances. A few more things were revealed. I found out that he had lost his job earlier this year and didn't tell me. He got a new job in October, but he went over 4 months without, while pretending he still had one. During that time, he only got a small amount of money from unemployment, so he started putting everything on his credit cards. His new job doesn't pay as much as his old one, so he hasn't been able to pay more than the minimum towards his debts, which are now substantial. I feel like if he had just brought up all these issues earlier, this could have been avoided, or we could have worked something out. Now I really just feel like I can't trust him. I can't trust him with money, and I can't trust him not to hide things from me. I just can't see going back and trying to make things work with him at this point. Since he doesn't have a place to take all their things, I've agreed to store their stuff in my garage until it gets more settled. Which means I won't be able to make as clean of a break as I would like right now, but for the most part it's over. I totally get how you're feeling. All I had to do was be honest with you. And well, yes, I get you're looking back and thinking, gosh, I guess I should have been able to figure out that if he made less, he probably really couldn't afford some of the trips. But as an adult, he literally could have just said that and told you to go ahead and have a good time. And then he would go on the next one with you. And then to not even tell you he lost his job and went for 4 months without one. All of this points to him having a pretty fragile ego. And that is not your problem, although they are at the end. He sure was trying to make it your problem. Suggestion I might if he can't afford it. I would literally pay for a storage unit for 6 months and have them move all of their stuff there. Prepay it for him and let him know that you have 6 months. That is more than enough time for him to find a place and get settled. And if he needs to go through things and get rid of some things so that they will all fit into his new place, it gives him time to do that as well. That way you are still helping, but it doesn't involve continued contact of any kind because you're storing their stuff. It is a one and done sort of thing. Storage unit is the way to go. Do you really want him coming by every other day because he needs something? From your description, it sounds like he may start trying to guilt you into assuming some responsibility for his poor choices. Make a clean cut. That was exactly my thought. It is exactly what I did when my ex left. He left all of his stuff, apparently thinking I was going to keep it in the house or store it. And that was a definite no. So I told him I'd put it in storage. And if I recall, I think I paid for either 3 or 6 months and told him it was up to him after that. I found out that he had lost his job earlier this year and didn't tell me. He got a new job in October, but he went over 4 months without one while pretending he still had one. I will never understand this logic. This is an immediate relationship killer as it should be. I would never be able to trust a partner who goes this route. Someone else commented, and I agree. If you can't afford it, I'd put their belongings in a storage unit. That way, he doesn't get complacent and your garage isn't full of junk. Heck yeah, I've been fired once, and my first call was to my husband. People are nuts. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband that his buddy's wife needing help is not my problem? My husband and I live right next door to his friend Tim and his friend's wife Jonah. I have a 4-year-old son and a week-old daughter. Tim and Jonah have a 5-year-old and 3-day-old boys. My labor went a lot smoother than hers did. She ended up needing an emergency hysterectomy as she was bleeding out on a delivery bed. They just came home last night. Now when they got home, Tim called my husband down to smoke a joint, and when he got back upstairs, he told me that Tim had asked him for a favor. Apparently, he was wondering if I would go over to his house periodically throughout the day while he was at work to check on his wife and do tasks for her, like cooking, cleaning, keeping her company, as she was bedridden and feeling really down and depressed from the unexpected hysterectomy and the reality of not being able to have more children. Listen, I feel for the woman. I really do. But this is not my problem. I just had a baby myself a week ago, and even cooking for us is a chore in itself because of how exhausted I am. My husband said repeatedly, it's okay if you say no. I'm sure they would understand, but it'd be nice if you did this for them, because I'm sure she could really use the company. I know I'm being selfish, but I do not care if she could use the company. And I really feel backed into a corner and manipulated with wordplay. It's okay if you say no, but you should just say yes. That I'm getting really angry that I'm even asked for this. I asked my husband why him or his buddy would immediately think I would be available to do this, considering I just had my own baby and I'm also taking care of our 4-year-old. He said, I understand that, but you're already up and doing things and she can't even do that because she's bedridden. So she can't even make her kid food or anything. Anyways, I told him no. I told him I had a bad taste in my mouth about them attempting to back me into a corner for a yes answer with their guilt trips, and that if she wasn't capable of doing anything, Tim needed to step it up. And either A, take time off work, or B, start meal prepping and call someone else to come into his home to do everything else. My husband and Tim work at the same job, and they were both given 4 days off when we went into labor, so he had time to try and figure this out. Instead, he just tried pawning it off to me, thinking I would say yes. My husband said that he doesn't blame me for saying no, but my attitude on it has caused tension between him and Tim, because I'm acting heartless. Am I the a-hole for not caring that Jonah needs help and telling them it's not my problem? Edited to add. Just want to add here that I have met this woman twice, for at most 15 minutes each time. My husband has only met her maybe 3 times. He only just started hanging out with Tim 4 months ago after he started working with him. Their friendship just grew super quickly because we coincidentally moved right beside them a month after they met. Now for the comments. Absolutely not the a-hole. You're a week postpartum. People should be bringing you meals. Tell your husband and his buddy to hire a caretaker. Go to a church. My church offers services like this for people in need, where someone can take time off work. I freaking hate when people feel the need to be charitable with the resources of other people. They both get to feel great about helping her out, while you, still bleeding in postpartum, get to take on another household chores. Not a-hole. Your husband and his buddy are a-holes. They basically voluntold you to do this. This isn't your problem, responsibility, or business. Husband's buddy can hire someone, or actually take time off to care for his wife and kid. Just because you live next to them doesn't mean anything. Next time they're having a meeting of the minds while smoking a joint, tell him to leave you out of any plans he/they have. They could have both spent that joint smoking time batch cooking meals, cleaning the house, etc. Tell both able-bodied men to get the chores done if they're feeling so charitable. The dad needs to step up and batch cook, etc. for his family. Pack a lunch for his wife and toddler each morning, etc. Any outside help, not from Moby, is a bonus. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole, but you are surrounded by a-holes. Okay, so let's lay out the fact pattern here. 1. You just had a baby. 2. Jonah just had a baby, and after a nearly fatal disaster, had an extremely invasive and traumatic emergency surgery. 3. Tim's first act in his house with his almost died wife and new baby was to call your husband to smoke a joint. 4. Your husband said yes. 5. Your husband presented a plan where you would subjugate yourself, your recovery, and your baby's first few weeks for someone else who you don't know, and whose husband doesn't prioritize over some weed. 6. Your husband expected you to say yes and then proceeded with the "it's not required, but it sure would be nice if you did." I feel for Jonah, but she married an idiot. How about you buy less weed and buy more food you can cook? I'm going to assume your husband and Tim aren't working 20-hour shifts and aren't on an oil rig where they can do stuff around the house and work with the baby and take care of their own. Damn, these guys suck. Best to you and your little one, but I feel like there's way more of this headed your way. Absolutely. I was 2 months post-emergency C-section and all my in-laws were mad that my husband refused to even ask if I wanted to do things that I wouldn't have done, and he knew it. I only found out about it as I heard his tone of voice change, and him saying because I'm her husband and I say no to his traditional family. Could I have gone if I wanted? Of course. And if I had wanted, that would have made me the instant golden person, but I wasn't risking it either. Point being that he took all the flack so I didn't have to worry about feeling pressured. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that I also have a right to be sad? I need a lot of advice. Me and my wife have been together for 10 years, married for 7. We have a little girl who's 5. Wife 2 years ago lost our baby, is stillborn. Do I blame my wife for losing him? No, of course not. She couldn't control it. That was June of 2022. She sunk into a deep depression, and I tried my best to get her out of it while taking care of our then 3-year-old and trying to work as much overtime as possible as I told her to quit her job. In November, I got her into therapy and that seemed to work out great. She started opening up to me about how she felt, which was good, and I think it really helped her heal. Me, on the other hand, I hate to sound like a narcissist, but I never healed, and I never got to talk about how I felt. Because she said I shouldn't feel sad because I didn't lose the baby. So I just stopped talking to her about me altogether and just listened to her. So now 2 years later, I'm not a drunk, but I do drink a good bit all considering. My wife is still stay at home and is looking to get a job so I won't have to work 14 hours anymore. She also wants to try again for a new baby, and I told her no, that we are not going to try again at the moment. She asked why, and I said, "You are healed from the death of our baby, I am not." She got mad and said that I shouldn't be sad because I didn't carry him and have to push out a stillborn. I just kinda said okay and went to get a drink. She had thrown out my alcohol. I told her we all grieve in different ways, and I'm grieving by drinking, so she should not have thrown out my drink. She still couldn't understand why I was grieving, and I just told her I have a right to be sad as well. She still couldn't understand it. So I pointed out who was there for her, and she couldn't understand it. So I just left the house. So was I wrong for telling her that I have a right to be sad as well? I will try to answer questions and comments. Edit. To address the main question, which is why didn't I get help when she did? She was going to therapy every day, which adds up. So for me, money was tight and was not enough to get us both therapy. Nor did I have time to either. And well, you had money for alcohol, yeah, because that may only be $20 to $50, and a lot of it we already had in the house. We got it for gifts, and she used to host a lot. Not the a-hole. She should not tell you how you should feel. You lost a child as well, and are allowed to grieve too. But dealing with your grief by drinking alcohol will only make things worse. You should also seek therapy. She needs to talk to her therapist about her feelings, about you shouldn't be feeling sad. I'm sure they can change her views on that. I'm sorry for your loss. Just wanted to add that hospitals and OBs generally have info/recommendations for support groups and specialized grief counselors for both parents. OP should reach out to their hospital or his wife's OB and ask for a recommendation. One of my friends had a stillborn baby, and her husband went to a support group and found it a better fit for him than individual therapy. It also sounds like they could use some family counseling as well, since the wife seems to think that he has no right to his grief. Not the a-hole. That child was both of yours. And her point of view that her hardship was worse than yours, therefore yours doesn't matter, is extremely flawed. You are a family and should stick together. For example, my mom, brother, sister, and I all suffered domestic violence at the hands of my father. Now, the amount of abuse and the kind of abuse we experienced was different, but that doesn't mean that anyone's pain isn't valid. My mom doesn't tell me that I don't have a right to be sad when my father was way meaner to her, and I don't tell my little sister that she should be over it because my pain is more valid. We are a family, and we're all there for each other when things get tough.